12209 Bailey Drive, the home of Bill and Joanne Schreur. And we're just have a beautiful setting this afternoon. The sun is shining. We're going to go in and do a oral civilian history here. Some of the activities and things that the Schreurs have done in the Virgins Township. Well, Bill and Joanne, thank you so much for inviting us into your living room or family room here today. This is an interview is sponsored by the Lowell Area Historical Museum. And my name is Ivan Blau. And this is Nick Blau, my grandson. And Nick will be filming our conversations and the stories we're telling today. So that'll give us a real nice history of what we've got to tell about. Now there's copies of this interview will be put into the archives of the Lowell Area Historical Museum. And hopefully forever. And also a copy will be put into the museum that will be made available to anyone that is a visitor of the museum or anyone that's researching history from the Virgins area and the Lowell area. So, Bill, I'll tell you, is farm boys and is 1949 Lowell High School graduate, and also a person who has spent probably 40 years in kind of the same business that you were in, pretty much, and also loves the outdoors and the nature that you show that you have loved and like. It's just been, for all those reasons, I've been looking forward to doing this interview. So, thank you so very much for letting us come in here and do this with you. To get started, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. We'll talk about your ancestors, people, where your folks originated from, and your grandfather and grandmother, where they originated from, and how your folks got together, their names. Okay? So you can tell me about that.
Well, my grandfolks on my father's side, on the Schreur side of the family, they were in the muck fields working, and they made a living raising onions and celery. And my folks on my mother's side, the Curtis side of the family, they lived on a farm and owned a farm all their life in the Beaver Dam area, which is just this side of Zeeland, Michigan. And my uncles were farmers, both in my dad and my mother's side both. I had quite a few uncles on my dad's side that were muck farmers.
You got a picture here, Bill. It would show this picture. I'm sorry, it shows all of your brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Aunts and uncles. I mean, yes. I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. Now, a lot of your folks came from Germany originally, right? Some were German and some were from the Netherlands.
The Schreur side of the family, they originated back from Germany.
Okay.
They were of the German descent. And my mother, her grandfolks came from the Netherlands. And that was many years ago, before I was born. So I can only tell you what history I have on it, but we don't have too many pictures from my grandfather's side of the family.
Well, this here one shows your uncles and aunts there.
Yeah, here's a picture of all my uncles.
Okay. Can you name them?
This is Uncle Andrew. Here's Uncle Ari. Here's Uncle John. Here's my father, Garrett Schreur.
And what was his name? Your father?
Garrett.
Garrett.
Garrett Schreur. And this is my father, Garrett Schreur. And this is my Uncle Dick Schreur.
Okay.
And it was always interesting that my Uncle Dick here was the first mayor of Hudsonville.
Well, that's interesting. Little
When
tidbit there.
when they incorporated it as a city, he was a real nice uncle. I thought a lot of all of my uncles were relatives.
Uh-huh. You had some aunts there too?
Yeah, and then there was my Aunt Green, my Grandma Schreur, Herman Schreur here. He was the last, the youngest of the Schreur. My grandfather, Garrett Schreur. This is Reen, Uncle Reen, Aunt Reen, and this is that's Ganette. The entire group here is deceased.
And most all of them were involved in muck farming? Most all of them?
Most of them were in muck farming.
Did you tell me the other day that you worked for one of them there when Herman?
Yeah.
During World War II, I crawled down many a row of celery weeding, and everything back in them days was done whether you didn't use chemicals.
By hand.
Everything you went through and cleaned everything up with your hands.
Because you were about 13, 14
I
years
was
old.
probably about 14 years old at that time.
Now your mother, we was talking about your mother yesterday, and she, what was her name?
Alice.
Alice, and she was, how did she come from California?
I think my grandfathers, my grandfolks who lived in, when they came from overseas, she was born in California, and then they migrated to Michigan, and my grandpa Curtis bought a 80-acre farm up in the Beaver Dam area. And,
His name was Curtis?
Will Curtis.
Will Curtis.
Will Curtis. Yeah. And my grandma's name was Jen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they had, somehow they got together anyway. They met each other.
Yeah.
Probably went to the same church.
Well, could be. I bet they did.
Yeah.
Because that's what, like all the Swiss people around here, all the Wittenbachs and all
Right.
of those, and the Ross, they all got together and they all was at one church. Yeah.
And my mother and dad dated in a horse and buggy back then.
Okay.
They had a horse and buggy, and from the Schreur house to the Curtis house, there was probably 4 or 5 miles that he had to travel by horse and buggy. And he tells me, and my folks told me that several times how my dad had fallen asleep in the buggy going back home, and the horses knew all the directions and how to get there. And
Just took him home.
yeah, took them home. Yeah.
They were probably safer than they go home today, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
No worries, no license, no nothing back then.
Now here we got another picture, and this picture is, I believe, of your mom and dad and all of you.
That's our whole family.
Okay.
My mother,
All right.
my mother and
You
dad.
can point them out.
This is my brother Gerald. He was home on furlough from ready to go overseas and fight in a Japanese island of Okinawa.
Mhm.
And this is my sister Jean.
That's she.
This is
Oh,
Dean.
this is Jean over here.
Yeah,
She married
Jen Beltray.
And this is Florence, my sister Florence.
and who'd she marry?
She married Gordon Anderson
Okay.
from Elkhart, Indiana.
All right.
And this is nice. Elfrida.
Elfrida?
Elfrida. She married Bob Small from Grand Haven, Michigan.
State Pat.
He was a state policeman.
Huh?
And then this is me. We're at about 14 to 15 years old.
Look at that new suit.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
And
got
then left for church.
too. This is my sister, my youngest sister, Gracia.
she married a banker.
He married a banker, and the last job he had, what it was in Hastings, Michigan.
That's what they do.
Now they retired and they're own the home right in Hastings.
Then your mother and dad there.
Yes.
Your father, what did he do after they were married?
After my father worked, I think 28 years at the Foreman Poultry Farm in Lowell, Michigan. They had their hatcheries right where the lumber yard is right now. In Lowell. That used to be the poultry farm. And he operated the hatching machine, all the incubators. Each week they harvest the eggs every Saturday or Sunday throughout most of the year.
Uh-huh. Now you can, I think you told me a little bit about how your dad got started there at the poultry farm.
Well, at that time, he met Ernie Foreman.
It's okay.
Dad worked for Cleanest Degrees in New Zealand, owned 21. The Cleanest Degrees had a little poultry farm and a hatchery, and Ernie Foreman was one of the poultry
Professor, maybe?
professor at the Michigan State College for their poultry division. And he would travel through, and once in a while he would stop at Cleanest Degrees' hatchery and always mention how he wanted to come to Lowell to establish an incubator hatchery down there and a poultry farm.
I see.
So my dad said, well, when you get to where you want to get started, I'll work for you. So it wasn't months passed by and he hired Dad to come down to Lowell. And the first home that we lived in is right on Main Street, close to the railroad. It used to be the Steffes Plumbing Supply.
Well, right there, almost at Amity's,
Right on
Corner of
Amity, the
corner of
corner of
Amity
Amity there.
in Maine.
And that's where I was born and raised for 3 years. And
I
then
see.
after about 3 years, we moved up on top of the hill into what was known then as the Peckham estate.
That Peckham house, huh?
Peckham House.
Huh?
Yeah.
You lived there how long? Well, you got married.
And I lived there, that would be probably 24 years, 25 years.
Okay.
And
So from living there in the Poconos, that's right on the curve there, isn't it, on G Drive?
Right on the curve there.
After you pass
the stone pillars along the road there.
Yes.
It's actually Foreman.
Foreman right there.
And actually then, so then you started going to school from there, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Remember your first day at school or where you went?
Well, I think it was my first grade or kindergarten. And I went to school right down there, and right on 21, just a little south of, or a little east of Cumberland Road, a little brick schoolhouse. It was called, I believe, Riverview School.
Okay, yeah.
And
That was probably a one-room school.
it was a one-room school with a wood furnace down in the basement of it. Lucky nobody got burnt there. But yeah, that was some
It was quite a walk for a little kid too.
Yeah.
walk.
They're down to Cumberland. That's
Yeah.
quite a ways.
Yeah, a lot of times my folks took us to school, but other times we waded through the snowbanks. And it seems back then we had a lot more snow in the winters than we have right now.
You only went there for a couple of years, didn't you? 1 or 2 years?
1 or 2 years, and then we went down to Lowell, the school, just a little bit north of where Englehart Library is now, and that school was there for years.
Did you remember your first teacher there?
Well, I think probably this Bushnell was my first teacher down there, and I remember her quite well because I got an awful spanking, and my pants was wet the rest of the day.
Oh my goodness. You,
Remember her well.
I remember her real well.
she made a very good impression on you.
Right.
She tried to get me straight right away.
You really didn't have it coming, as the story I heard.
No, I didn't think I had it coming. She misjudged me. That was a big fad at that time to flop your hands around and
Thumb your nose, huh?
thumb your nose.
Yeah.
And in the second story, these kids were yelling and thumbing their nose, and I was returning and thumbing to my nose, and she was at the window knocking for me to come into her office and in her room. And when I got there, she laid me out on the table in the hallway and face down. And she wheeled me pretty good.
And she was no small person.
No, she wasn't.
Them hands were pretty heavy.
Oh goodness, that's a heck of a note.
Yeah.
And now, you were probably at that time you were born, in 1930, right, Bill?
1930.
Yeah. May
March 31, 1930.
March 31, 1930. Yeah. And so you'd probably been about 7 years old then.
I was probably about 7 years old.
Uh-huh. And now your father was working at the poultry hatchery, and I understand they had a lot of predators down there and stuff, skunks and so on. And
Yeah.
they kind of were getting the chickens, or
Yeah, we had problems with skunks. We had fox bother our chickens, and we had dogs bother our chickens, hawks and owls. We had Ernie had coops at that time, and the chickens would run around right to the creeks and night, a lot of the chickens would roost in the heavy limbs of a lot of trees around there, and the owls would come at night and see these white lizards in the trees.
Oh.
And they would kill every night. We had trouble with the owls. So finally, what I did is I trapped the owls by having a chicken underneath a screen or something, so the owl couldn't get them, but the owl would circle around that cage and get caught in my trap.
Okay.
At that time, they weren't protected, so we destroyed them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were out working already and trapping 7 years old, learning the trapping trade.
I was
1937.
a predator hunter and trapper, starting back quite young.
Yeah, I guess you were. You know, that was 1941 come along, a couple, 3 years later. That's when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and the war began in the Pacific. And but you were still going to school, and in about 1942, you'd have been in about the 6th grade.
Probably right around the 6th.
And you remember your teacher there?
Hannah Reynolds.
Hannah Reynolds.
She was a great person, Hannah Reynolds. The only trouble is I came to school after I got sprayed pretty heavy with some skunks. And
How'd that happen? What were you doing?
well, I was trapping. I had a trap line a little bit. On the way to school, I would run the one trap line, and on the way back from school, I'd run the other trap line. And it happened to be that on the way to school in the morning, I had 2 skunks in 2 different sets I had there. And they got me pretty good with their spray. And I got in school and
Well, you left the skunks, did you? You left the skunks along the road?
I left the skunks right there where I caught them.
Okay.
And I took them home on the way home that night.
Okay.
I picked them up and took them home.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't last only about 15 minutes in school. And Hannah Reynolds screamed and she said, "Bill, get out of here and don't come back for 3 days." So that was good news to me. I had a school vacation.
And you could trap all to your heart's content, right?
And the thing about it, I skinned the skunks out and I got $7 each for them.
Now, that was a lot of money in 1942.
Back in 1942, that was a lot of money.
You could buy, gosh, probably a good pair of pants for that.
Yeah,
At least, maybe even a suit.
my mother used all her canned tomatoes, rubbing it into my skin and clean it off my body. And it took a good three days to get that off me. That's great.
What'd you do with the skunks off when we got them home?
When I got them home, I hung them on the clothesline and skinned them out. I couldn't smell skunk by that time. You had that odor. And once you sniffed of it a little bit, you're immune to it or something. And I didn't realize that I even had any skunks spray me.
Okay.
So
Real strong at first.
it was my first education in trapping, catching, and skinning skunks.
Skunks, huh? Didn't learn about the glands in the back there that you gotta miss, huh?
When you skin them out, you want to make sure you don't skin the glands out.
Well, that's pretty good. Skunks were worth $7 or $8 way back then.
Yeah.
And I think there was another story that I heard about, something about a frog, or some frogs that you went frog.
Oh, well, I got into one trouble after another, and the second big lesson was that I clubbed these frogs, and I thought, well, I'll put them in the refrigerator, and when mother comes home, them frogs, she can dress them out however she wants to.
Now, you was right close to the Cherry Creek here, weren't you? The flats down
Yeah, right there, right down the,
there. Okay.
right where Cherry Creek goes through where the high school is down. Right across from Christoph and horseradish business.
Okay, so a lot of frogs along there.
I always got all the frogs we needed for a good meal right down through there.
Okay.
But I didn't love them good enough to keep it. And some of them came through. And where did they go? They went into my mother's dish of bowl of jello that she had cooling in the refrigerator for our supper. And when she got home, I heard a terrible scream. She said, "What did you do? You put all these frogs in the refrigerator?" And I said, "Yeah, but I put them in the sack, the onion sack." And I said, I thought I killed every one of them. No, she says, half of them are swimming in my jello. So
She was a good mother. Put up with a lot.
Wonder if you even lived, was it?
I look back, I don't know how she put up with me.
Good. Well, you were trying to do something nice for her. You were trying. She liked frog legs, I bet. She like my
the
mother
frogs,
did.
and I think she took all the frogs and dressed them out,
I bet she
saved the
did.
legs, and they were delicious. Frog legs are the most delicious meat there is.
Yeah. Now, okay, so in grade school, you kind of made a name for yourself, and
Yeah, everybody knew me after the skunk ordeal. To this day, different ones remind me, well, do you remember, Bill, that back so many years ago when you got kicked out of school because you got peed on with a skunk? And I said, I sure do. I said, I'll remember that all my life.
yeah, I was just talking to Pat O'Neill the other night, and he mentioned that.
Did he?
Yeah, I don't know. He knew about it anyway. Somebody told him. Or else he was there. Anyways, 1945 come along, and by 1945 you were about 15, and you were in high school. So, and one of your teachers there probably was one of the same ones we all had to take. Cause that's the year I started high school with as a freshman. And we all had to take English. And Becky Smith was one of my teachers. I suppose you see her too?
Becky Smith was my English teacher.
Yeah.
And Becky Smith was a beautiful person. She was one of my favorite school teachers.
She was.
Everything was all good with her. She didn't have to spank me.
She lived right there on High Street.
Yeah.
And just down about a block from the school, as I remember.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Bob Stewart the other day, and he was telling me about her husband and her both, and how he used to enjoy going there and visiting with them when he was a kid. So, so that's kind of neat.
Yeah. She always called her husband my Billy.
My Billy, huh?
My Billy. Yeah.
Now, in school, you played a little baseball.
I played baseball for several years, and it was quite difficult. I had going home from school and practice, going all the way home down Foreman Road. I decided that I didn't have the time for baseball, and I went to trapping and hunting and fishing. I was more interested in.
That's probably why you didn't play any of the other sports in the fall and winter, right?
Probably I was busy with my own.
Now, when you played baseball, what positions did you play?
I played right field. Most of the time I played center field.
You there again, like you say, you were trapping before and after school, and all through the fall and the winter months at that time. And it's 1945, and of course your brother had gone been called to fight the Japanese in war, and his name, I think a lot of fondly everybody I've ever heard of called him Yachts. Is that right?
Yeah.
His name was really Gerald. Is that correct?
And his name was Gerald.
Uh-huh.
And
He was a Marine, right?
he was in the.
Is that a picture over there, Joanne? Oh yeah. That's Gerald. That's your brother.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Good. All right, and actually, Bill, do you remember when your folks got a call about yachts,
Maine,
or where you were, or what happened there?
he died in battle May 19, 1945.
In 1945.
And it probably was 2 or 3 days after that we had a little Mr. Louis Phelps came up with a telegram from the War Department saying that my brother had passed away,
Okay.
killed in action with enemy gunfire.
Uh-huh. And that was on Okinawa.
That was Okinawa. Okinawa, Guana Ridge. It was a rocky cliffs. The Japanese were embedded in like Iwo Jima.
Okay.
In fact, there was more deaths to our American forces in Okinawa than there was Iwo Jima.
Is that right?
Yeah. That was one of the hard-fought battles of the Pacific Theater of War.
And after you got that telegram and so on, then you were sent some different medals, and this is a gold star, I believe, here,
Yeah.
a ribbon, and well, there's lots of other little medals here for like this is and Purple Heart that Bill has, I guess, probably. Yeah. And this is another one of the other medals that, from the European, or not European, but Pacific Theater War. Some of these also were of his. Anyways, these are the battle ribbons, and another star that could be worn as a gold star.
One of these was a sharpshooter.
He was a sharpshooter.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what that says, isn't it?
Yeah.
These are, yep, sharpshooter medal.
Yeah.
See that? All right.
One of his buddies that was with him when he died
Uh-huh.
took the watch and billfold off his body and personally delivered it to my mother and dad soon after the World War II was over.
Oh, after he came home, huh?
When he came home.
Oh, okay. He was with him.
And
Where was he from?
he was from Ohio.
Oh,
And he was a cousin of Bob Small, who was my brother-in-law. Married my
Turned out
sister.
to be
is that right?
And we heard later that he died. He died in a terrible auto wreck.
Oh,
He didn't live too much longer.
just shows we all have to be ready to go, whether we're in war or whether we're at home or wherever, whatever we're doing, whatever occupation we have.
Yeah, that was a sad news when we heard that.
Sure.
And I don't know where the rest of the family is settled down, but he was a nice fellow.
Mhm.
I wish I could have known him more.
All right. Well, that's I think the war touched an awful lot of us, all through different ways. It was a terrible war. It sure was.
It was worse than the Korean or Vietnam. There was many people died.
Now, well, at 47, life has to go on, and you were still trapping. And you were learning the trapping trade a little more sophisticated. And you told me something about you got a little help, little education from trapping. How did that all come about?
Well, living on the poultry farm there, my dad working for Ernie Foreman, we had quite a lot of predators. And so I was doing a lot of trapping, and I was getting up there in age where I could range out a little bit. So I was trapping fox in the sections of land just north out of Ola in Virginia's Township. And we had quite a few fox. The population of fox was increasing, and they were damaging the pheasants. They were getting the quail and the partridge and raiding the poultry houses, and they got so brave they would go right in through a hole, any place they could get in a chicken coop and kill chickens. And so I went to trapping, but I didn't know too much about trapping fox at that time because they were a pretty keen animal to try to trap. And so I ended up, we located a state trapper who was employed with what they called a trapper who advised. He worked with the poultry people. Anybody that had complaints about their fox getting in their chicken coops and killing their chickens and poultry, it soon became an established predator control officer. Was working with all the landowners and farmers and trying to reduce and trying to get rid of these fox. And so we heard about that there was one predator control officer operating and employed by the Michigan State DNR. That department, at that time, it was called the Game Department. And he came out and showed us quite a few tricks about catching fox and how to clean your traps and cover your traps up with wax paper. And went through all the details, and it was just enough advice and help that I went right ahead and started fox trapping. And it didn't take long that I knew how to trap fox pretty well.
Now, you were 17 years old. That was not 1947 there. We've got a picture here, Bill, I found. Your wife found for me. And shows you with a whole bunch of skins here.
Yeah. Well, the story about that is that at that time fox were worth about $10 for the pelt, and it was just lucky at that time that the fox, there was a bounty on fox, and that was $5 to a county bounty and $5 to the state. So you had to bring your fox in, and it used to be Esther Farney and Lowell represented the county punch, and then I had to get it punched by the state.
They usually put a clip in the ear, didn't they?
They put a clip right in their ear and made a little hole right in the ear. So I got $10 for the bounty, $10 for the belt, and that year I think I fought probably right around 15, 14 fox the first year that I started trapping them.
I think on the back of that picture there, isn't that Joanne? Did you read that off
Was
there?
four mink, it got was that $30 a piece for the mink? Or was that $30?
Yeah, no, it'd be $30 a piece.
$30 a piece for mink.
Mink were worth $30. Now you can't hardly give them away.
And 31 muskrats at $2.30 a piece.
Yeah.
So,
And the foxes were $10 a piece,
Yeah.
plus the bounties.
Yeah.
So, when you sold all that, those you ended up getting like $300 or so. What did you do with that money?
Yeah, well, I had that $300 in my pocket, and I wanted to burn it on something, and it was just lucky I went to one of the landowners that let me trap his 20 acres along Bailey Drive on the railroad track, and there was a nice little stream always going through this 20 acres, and I stopped off a couple dollars to the Frank Dickinson for allowing me to trap his creek, and ended up, he told me, he says, well, don't come back next year, because he says, I'm going to put that 20 acres for sale. And I said, well, I had that $300 in my pocket, was ready to do business with him. And he says, well, I don't know if you want to buy that or not, because he says, I got to have $300 for it. And,
for 20 acres.
For 20 acres.
20 acres, yeah.
And I told him, I said, would you sell me the 20 acres? And he says, you're a miner, and he says, I don't know if I dare to deal with you. And I said, if you can't deal with me, I said, I'll bring my dad along and have him sign to get, because I figured it out, I could get $300 over a period of 5 years. I could get my money back just out of his little swamp alone. So it ended up, I went down to the Lowell Bank, and Harry Day was the president of the bank, the Lowell Bank at that time. And I told Harry Day, I said, I got a problem. I said, I want to make a deed out. I bought 20 acres out in the country, and I'd like to have him make out a deed. He says, a miner, he says, you're a miner, he says, I wouldn't dare to make the deal up and make a closing, have a deed signed. And I said, if you can't make the deed out, don't dare to make the deed out. I said, I'll have my dad come down here. And he said, just a minute, he says, I'll get our bank attorney on the line and see what to do.
Okay.
And so, anyway, that was one of the great days of my life when he called it lawyer Schibel from Lowell.
Oh, yeah.
He was a great attorney, and lawyer Schibel told Harry Day over the phone, he says, a miner can buy property, but a miner is not allowed to sell property.
Oh, is that right?
Okay. And he hung up and he looked at me and he said, I'm allowed to make the deal with you. and that was one of the greatest feelings in my life.
You bet.
And
So that was...
It went on through the years, and I ended up building a home on the property.
Now that was the house right next door to you here, right?
Next door.
Just to the east.
Just east of our present
House here,
where we live now.
and before you get to the railroad track.
Before you get to the railroad.
Now that railroad track, apparently cut that 20 acres in half, did they?
Frank Dickinson owned 40 acres, and the railroad went right through, split right through the center.
The whole thing.
And I took the west 20, and he kept the east 20.
That's the way it was. Okay, so everything this side of the railroad track is what you bought.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, good. Then here you are. You haven't even graduated from high school yet. You've already got 20 acres of land. And that should tell us something where this whole thing is going, shouldn't it? Huh? Anyway, in 1949, you and I both graduated from Lowell High School.
We both graduated.
You bet. We made it.
Yeah.
And I got out of high school and I went to work for Walt Graham as a carpenter. And you got out of high school and evidently you went to work for another contractor.
Well, there was during World War II, there was a period that I worked right in the muck fields.
Okay.
Right here on Bailey Drive on the east side of the railroad.
Okay.
Where Dan Voss built a little home there. And during war, he was in farming. He had a little celery and onions. And he had enough acreage that he worked there to qualify him to keep from going to the war.
Oh, going in service.
And he wasn't too crazy about going into service. So he went to farming for
Okay.
a while.
All right. So you worked for him, and then you got to work for him as a carpenter too.
And then, soon after I worked a couple years in the muck, we went to building a few homes in Grand Rapids, and mainly worked for his brothers who were in business in Grand Rapids.
Okay. While you were working during the day as a carpenter or Dan and kind of learning the trade, you kind of went back to one of your old passions a little bit. You played a little more baseball.
Yeah, we played in a summer league. I played for, I think 1 year I played for Rittinger Insurance, and then Foreman Hatchery formed a little ball team, and so I was on that for several years.
Uh-huh.
And then later on, I got married.
You got too busy, huh?
I got too busy and
Well, that seems like it was about 1953. There, you were 23 years old, and you kind of started out in building a house for somebody.
then I built a house at that time. Back then, I built a house for my mother and dad on Thornapple River Drive in Cascade.
No, that was your first house then.
I think it was one of my first houses, but the first one actually was on my 20 acres here on Bailey Drive that I had purchased in 1947.
Okay.
And from that, I got several jobs. I built a house for Dr. Ralph White, Lutheran minister in Grand Rapids, who owned 80 acres where now is Cumberland Estates.
Oh, okay.
Trailer park area.
Uh-huh. So that was 1953 in that area.
1953.
Mm-hmm. And you are really getting into the building now, and probably pretty soon then you didn't have much time to play ball anymore. Now you didn't have to have a license, did you, at that time to be a contractor?
I didn't get a license for about a few years.
Yeah. Around 68 or
I
so.
don't recall anybody else
No,
getting a license.
didn't have to have it. I don't
Didn't
think.
have to have.
But then a funny thing happened here. About 1955, there was a Cupid shot an arrow. Now, I don't know where that came from, but do you know anything about that, Joanne?
Well, yes.
Can you tell us a little about that?
I was getting a haircut in Owen Ellis's barber shop, and Bill was sitting there laughing and talking with Dave Clark. And the first thing I knew, a few days later, I got a call and was invited to go to the showboat.
Well, how about that?
That was our first encounter.
Showboat 1955, huh? I can't remember who was on them. I should have looked that up. But we'll find out.
Either.
I told Owen Ellis, I said, she looks like a nice girl.
Uh-huh.
And he says, she is. And that's all it took.
That's it. Well, gee
And
whiz.
then I was seen her neighbor of quite a few years, Elmer, lawyer.
Yeah.
And I told Elmer, I said, I'm going to date one of your girls in the neighborhood. And he says, who's that? And I said, Joanne Leslie. Well, he says, she's a good girl. He says, she's always been a nice girl. And so we did.
So you got two good recommendations.
And now he always took credit for getting us together
He did.
until the day he died.
I said, remember, Bill, I hitched yours too? And I said, I remember talking something about it. But
That's cute.
So, anyway, didn't take you very long. Make up your mind, top question.
yeah, everything was okay.
It was okay, but I wait around.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I understand that about how long was it?
About 6 months.
Oh, 6 months?
January 14th, 1956, we got married.
There you go.
And our first date was the Lowell Showboat.
Yeah. Where did you go for your honeymoon, or didn't you have a
We
honeymoon?
did. We was building a house.
You were busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know when we took that honeymoon,
You
but
was helping to build the house before you got married, huh?
well,
Were you
he-
helping him a little bit?
I worked for Gerald Rollins at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In the insurance company.
And insurance, yeah.
I see.
And so I worked there until our first son was born, and then I retired.
Now you were about 20 years old when you got married,
Yeah.
and Bill was 25.
Yeah.
Right? And from that marriage, we got a picture here. You can tell us about who those folks are. Can you see that okay, Nick?
Can you see that now?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell them about it.
You can tell
Well,
who's
then
who
I'll
there.
have to tip it because I
Yep.
can't see
Yeah, that's
upside
okay.
down.
There you
This is,
go.
just a minute. Let me look at it, Nick, and then
Okay.
I'll tell you. Okay. This is Christine. She's our middle daughter. And this is Mary, our youngest daughter. And this is Philip, our oldest son. And Bill, our youngest son. And Pam is our oldest daughter. And then myself and Bill. Yeah.
Now, I've got a record here that says that Bill was born about 1957. Pam was born in 58. And Kristen was born about 1960. And William J. was born in 62. And Mary in about 63.
Yeah,
Then it came to an end.
that's right.
That was it.
And I had a busy life.
Yeah, I guess you did. We were very busy. Now, you know, I can look back up there. My daughter, Melinda, and Pam were pretty good friends at one time. They see
Okay.
each other.
Yeah.
And I remember Pam coming and going with us to Detroit, to the zoo,
Really?
and staying overnight
I don't
in
remember.
the zoo. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
remember that.
we did that. I don't know what year it was,
Oh,
but she was about that age, probably, maybe a little older. Probably was in high school then.
Yeah, this was.
Well, let's back up just a little bit here, because all those kids were born in 1963. That was a busy time. But you got married in 1956, and also something else you did in 1956. You bought some more land,
Yes,
about 350 acres, I understand.
it seems like one farm after another. I had first chance on, and in 1961 or 1960, we bought what is known as with the old time people here as the Blue Farm.
Okay.
And back in them years, it was grapes and apples, and that's how they made their living here. The Blues were deceased soon after, and before I bought the farm here. It was 155 acres of land, and it was for sale for $6,000 cash money.
Oh, yeah. When was that?
was in 1961 when I bought it.
Okay, I gotta go back a little bit further, shouldn't I?
Well, actually, the Hendricks farm, we bought that just before we were married, but from Tom Johnson.
Wait, I bought the Johnson farm before I bought the Blue farm. So it was in the 1956, right around there,
Yeah.
where we bought most of the Tom and Sylvia Johnson
Okay.
estate.
Okay. Now that's there was 3 pieces there, was there?
Yeah,
Kind of.
was 3 different pieces.
With a Hendricks and a Dahan.
And then we bought the Hendricks farm later on. The one, let me see, we bought the Dahan farm from Hendricks in about 1959.
He's back in memory.
Yep. That's all close in
Yeah,
there.
it's all.
Now, and then, and I know that in 1960 there, you were telling me about starting to plat some of this land. And there's a plat map up here that you started on. It's one that's a little later, but it's similar to that. And that was the kind of thing that you kind of started out doing, was platting some of this land off for houses and make it into lots. And anyway, you were kind of a forerunner, I believe, at least in this area, of getting plat going and getting special financing. You come along with what's called what, FHA? Tell me about that.
FHA, and at that time, FHA was insuring mortgages for people with a requirement of very little money down. In fact, some of the builders were at that time allowing people a credit towards the down payment for raking the yard or doing some of the landscaping and handwork around. But I couldn't get FHA financing. I was turned down. I didn't know what to do, and finally I decided that I had to get some advice from somebody.
Okay. Well, how you ended up getting FHA financing for this piece of ground?
Well, that's one thing that I realized that I had to have is financing to offer younger people and people with a small down payment. And so it ended up that one day I was coming down through Main Street and I seen Gerald Ford's congressional bus down on Main Street, parked right by a King Milne company there. And I thought, well, I can't do any harm by seeing our congressman and seeing if there was some way that they could tell me what I had to do to get FHA financing. And I explained to Congressman Ford that I had a problem with the FHA in Grand Rapids, that one of the guys that answered the phone there when I talked about getting financing, he said to me, he says, well, he says, out there in the country where you're going to be building, he says, one of your customers stick their head out the window or step out of the door will get killed by the Indians.
That was not a very smart thing to say.
And I didn't accept his cocky statement. So I told Gerald Ford about it. I said, I called, I telephoned, and FHA, and I tried to work along with them. And one of the guys by the name of so-and-so told me, he says, well, he says, the Indians, the skill every customer you had with their bows. And he impressed me as quite a smart aleck. And I didn't decide not to accept anything he had to say.
And here's a picture then of Gerald Ford actually coming out to see you, huh?
So he says, I have to go back to Congress in Washington. And he says, I'll be coming back out here and I'll have time to look your land over with you. And at that time, Dan Treelevin from Lowell was the head of the SHA office in Grand Rapids.
Oh yeah, that's him on the picture there beside Gerald Ford and you.
So that's me right here. And that's Gerald Ford in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And Dan Treelevin.
Okay. And that's your son, is that Phil?
That's Philip, yeah.
Okay.
He was about 3.
3 years old.
And it relieved me a little bit. Gerald Ford said, he says, I'll tell you what, he says, I'll send out some decent guy or two from the FHA that will help you and tell you what to do to qualify for FHA assistance in my subdivision. And I told him, I said, you know, my brother died in Okinawa, and I don't think he died for this one person, for the way he acts. And he said to me, he says, well, he says, he's not going to get by with this. He says, we're going to get you FHA here and find out what requirements they want you to go through. He says, we'll get you FHA here, but you'll have to just go through a few procedures with your township. Getting your township to zone the area residential, and after a while, I was able to get FHA.
And that was in 1960. That was
in 1960.
Yeah. And then 1961, you bought this area, where this house is.
And in 1961, I was busy. We were just getting organized down in our plat along M91 Flat River Drive and for Jim's Road there. And we had the opportunity of buying this piece of property up here from Harold and June Wheelock.
That was right next door to the other piece you had here.
Next door to the 20 acres of
Yeah.
And we ended up buying the 155 acres of land. And I look back today, I don't know how we ever negotiated a deal like that. We bought it for $6,000.
Is that right?
Yeah.
1961, you bought this for $6,000. The old house, pretty. Yeah,
It figured out, I think, at $40 an acre.
Uh-huh. That's something.
Yeah.
Oh, now, then this house, then you had all those new houses, or you were building new houses along there between 61 and 64, and for some reason you decided to remodel this one, clean it up.
I decided to work on this one. I just took off from my work down there on my flat, just out of Lowell there. And I came up here, and we didn't decide for sure at the time we were remodeling it, fixed it up, get it livable anyway, you know. We didn't decide for sure at that time what we were going to do, and ended up Chuck Hoffman, they stopped by, and he was working for Runsman in the beam electric eye business, and he needed a home, and he needed one right away, and we had this one just about complete, so it was livable. And it ended up that we rented to Chuck Hoffman and his family, and that was probably the 2 to 3 years, maybe.
Okay.
3
1963.
And then after a period of time, we decided that we wanted to come up to the hill here because I had put a lot of nice, good deer hunting here, and I wanted a place to hunt.
Yes.
And so we moved up here and stayed up here ever since. Raised our kids here.
We put in a lot of trees.
I ended up planting a lot of trees here on the farm. In fact, over a span of all these years since I bought my first land in Virginia Township, we probably planted 400,000 trees in all the acreage from down near the Flat River area and Burroughs Road, up here to Bailey Drive, and Alden Nash Road.
That's quite a conservation project in itself. Bill.
It,
You can be proud to look back at that.
I
See
look
that.
back to that, it
Yeah.
makes me feel pretty good
Yes.
that we took time off and we didn't go on vacations. We were busy planting trees and landscaping.
Now the kids that all helped do that probably do, didn't they, as they got along?
Yep, when they got older,
Got
they
old
could
enough.
do that. Yeah.
You had another picture here of some of the
Somebody-
conservation.
That's right.
This was
Projects.
my projects back here. This is in our backyard, all these deer here. There's 80 some deer, if you can count in the picture, but my camera couldn't grasp the full amount. I had just a little small 35 millimeter camera.
Huh?
There was around 100 actually.
100 deer.
We
And you were
counted,
feeding those?
and we were feeding them here.
Bad winter.
And it was bad winters. And we had dogs running them. And it was quite upsetting to spend that much time on a deer herd trying to get them through the winter.
Yeah.
Plus having neighbor dogs and hunters come through there and chase them. And there was two of the deer that were had three legs. They had, I assume they got their legs shot off during gun season,
Okay.
and they were vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
But a good hunter is also a good conservationist.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to put back what you take.
That's what we're seeing here is a lot of examples of what you've done with the land and with the animals, and we're going to get into some more of that too. Now you moved in this house here then in 1964, and those are kind of some of the pictures that we see out of here. And the boys are now by 64. Well, they're getting up. Until around 8 years old or so, and then up to 1973, they begin to be quite a little bit of help to you, didn't they? Probably in planting the trees and working in.
They worked with me running the machines and hand planting trees, and we were busy all the time doing something. If it wasn't carpenter work, it was landscaping and reforestation of land. And, then about that time, I think, is when we first introduced the Commercial Forest Act. We were, I think, the first landowners in Kent County to go under the Commercial Forest Act. We entered our property in, and what it done is it opened it up for anybody who was welcome to hunt. And that's the way it is today,
Oh, is that right?
under the Commercial
I see.
Forest Act.
Okay.
It's 155 acres that we live on.
Okay.
It's in that, so it's the property down in Burroughs and Lincoln Lake.
Oh, okay. It's all open to.
It's all open to hunting. That was one agreement that the state insisted that you sign before. And under the Commercial Forest Act, you're only charged on ad valorem tax, and today that tax I think is around 50 to 60 cents an acre.
Oh, is that right?
That's all.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And,
So that
You
works
can't
both
work.
ways then. But you put a lot of sweat equity into that,
oh
getting
yeah,
it to be that way.
Oh yeah, you
It
gotta
makes
have
it
it
nice honey.
completely
Sure.
completed for reforestation and for wildlife.
Huh?
And it worked out good for us, the landowners, and it worked out good for the hunters that wanted to come here and spend the hunting season. And
Now you have all the turkeys out here besides that I just saw this morning, or the tracks of them anyway. I'm gonna take a peek out there and see whether turkeys started to move in. Anyways, we'll go along to about 1973, and I believe Phil went to the Army then, your oldest son,
Yeah.
and
on the shooting team.
yeah, okay, you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, he was a sharpshooter, or not a sharp. Well, I guess he got to be a
Sure.
sharpshooter, and
He was on the Army team.
yeah, and that's all they do is shoot. It's just a military. It's just like the army or the band.
Just like the band, yeah.
They're performing. And he qualified to go to the Olympics, and that year Bill's dad passed away, and he had to be out there when the funeral was on, and it kind of, it didn't set too well with him to not be able to be here. But at least he got to go to the Olympics. It was out.
He did go to the Olympics.
He
got
did go
there.
out there, yeah.
That-
But he said I couldn't have beat those guys.
Huh.
He's real good in Michigan, and
Mhm.
and in the Army he had a lot of medals. But
He had a lot of competition.
Yeah,
that was
that's competition
Well,
probably.
overseas competitive.
You get to the Olympics, you're up there pretty good.
Yeah, but it was fun.
Well, that's great accomplishment, and I'm sure you take some pride in that, in seeing your boys do well, all of them, and your girls,
Yeah,
whatever they're doing. Now, all of these plats that you have had going, and so on. Or one of them I think was called Scenic. What was the name of
So
the
the
plat?
first one was for Jen's plant,
Or Jen's plat.
and then Scenic View was on the south side of Virginia Street.
Okay, Scenic View. All right, and anyway, then you had plats number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on as you progressed and fill them up and go. Now, what did houses sell for back when you started, Bill?
When I first started
No,
there,
1956.
right around 1956, I think, if I got $12,000 for a lot, the whole complete house.
And the house.
Yeah.
In the house, all done.
Okay, now what would that house sell for today? The same one you built it.
They probably, them houses along Virginia's Road there in my scenic view plat, and then on the north side of the road is Virginia's plat. Them houses today probably go for 100,000, 110,000 right in there.
And you built and developed together, you and the boys working together like that. And now I know the boys, some of them got their own, Bill and Joe each got their own separate flats too that they work on and separate houses. You built over 65 houses, I believe, at least in there, maybe more.
Well, we got quite a spread there, and all the way from the city limits of Lowell, with houses all the way to Flat River.
Sure.
And we got quite a layout started there, and we plan on building a lot more there.
That's the new flat up there
Right.
that you plan on, right?
Yeah.
That you plan to do. So that's how many houses are in that? Possible lots.
Over 100.
Over 100 lots in there.
Over 100 buildings.
So I think you're gonna keep the boys busy, even as long as you want to be busy, and keep the boys busy for quite a
Who knows,
while.
Maybe the grandchildren.
Yeah, there you go. Third generation of
You never know.
builders.
2 or 3 generations of Schreurs will probably someday eventually fill them up.
Now, does Bill and Phil have some sons?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill has Eric, and Bill has Joe and Bob.
Right, and you have some girls too, granddaughters.
In there, Philip has Elizabeth, and Bill has Emily and Rebecca.
Okay.
And the girls,
Sure.
the girls have, Pam has a boy and a girl.
Uh-huh.
Jarrett, he's just graduated from Michigan State, and he's going to be teaching after this year. He's actually, right now, he's, what do you call it,
Practice teaching.
or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
down at City High in Grand Rapids. And so when he gets through this year, then he'll be looking for a job.
Uh-huh.
And Callie goes to Caledonia School.
Okay.
And then Chris has 3 girls and a boy. And they all go to, well, the girls are in Christian High, and the other 2 are in Westside Christian School.
All right.
Alpine.
So
And
you-
her husband's a podiatrist out there.
Nice.
So she's a stay-at-home mom and helps out there.
So grandkids, you got about 12. I counted right.
Sounds right, yeah.
How about that? 12 grandkids. Yeah, you beat me by 3.
Okay.
Anyways, that's pretty neat. And you know, on another side, like, you know, of all the houses you built and all the amount of value of that platinum, it really generates a lot of money for your community. And it's going to keep generating money for this community for many, many, many years. And it's always, I think, overlooked so many times by a lot of people. They think, oh, he's a rich guy because he's out there working and he's building a house, you know, and he's doing that. You don't realize that what you put into it, that maybe 10% or 8% that you end up getting out of the house,
Yeah.
it's all that you get out of a house to use. And yet that house sits there, and for years and years and years and years, it generates money for our community. And that's kind of a neat thing. A neat thing I think we should, more people should remember.
Well, in fact, that just reminds me, Ivan, I don't mean to boast, but one day a fella working, I won't say his name,
Sure.
not because I'm ashamed of it, but he's deceased now. He says to me, he says, Bill, he says, you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I said, you know, I said, I've been so busy in my life that I never had time to look back and
Count your money.
count the money. And I said, that's the first time I guess anything like that has been brought up.
Yeah.
And that's what that's the answer I give him. And I think you probably, Ivan, realize that statement is true. You work hard all your life, and you don't look back. You'll keep right on going.
Yeah, you work at it just like you did when you had to count the bread slices.
That's right.
Right?
That's
You remember those days.
Yeah,
We're,
that's right.
we're just as conservative today as we
You bet.
were back 50 years
Yeah,
ago.
you bet. It's a lifestyle.
It is.
And yet it's great to enjoy. And some of the things that you've enjoyed, now we're going to go on to some of those hobbies and some of those things that you've enjoyed while you've been doing all this work and getting into this. I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to visit your Arrowhead Displays here. And one of them is right here, we've been looking right over the top of. And I don't know how, can you get that okay, Nick? Can you see what some of those things are there? Here's a little box for this.
Okay.
Well, we're getting it right here. But does that show pretty good there, Nick?
Yeah, let's check it out.
You can tip the camera up on edge if you want to, or bring it up forward, whatever.
That would be
Anyway.
the way to do is if you could bring it right up.
Sure, we can do that. And Bill, you tell us a little bit about what some of these things are in here and what types of arrowheads we got in here.
Well, being in the building business and you landscape every house, and I keep my eyes open for any flintstones I see.
Sure.
And through the long period of time, starting many years before I was even in business. We used to play on the hills, sand hills, and back in the 30s and 40s. Most of these hills were barren sand hills, and everything was exposed. You could go through and pick up arrowheads, and I'd come home every time I went up there playing those kids. I'd come home with a pocket full of arrowheads, and through the years, it accumulated to quite a few heads. And
Been sitting there for quite a while, haven't
yeah,
Stepping up.
There we go. All right.
and I got an assortment in this collection right here of quite a few heads, spearheads. And this is just about like we would have a sledgehammer.
Uh-huh. That's what that'd be used for.
That's too big for a tomahawk.
Yeah.
Here's tomahawks right here. Here's a tomahawk. I was telling you, Ivan, about this one right here. Was one that Elmer Lawyer gave me,
Okay.
plus some other heads that he left for me. Then this is a Firestone right here.
See the little
Yeah.
hole in it there?
The whole, they would whip a string, the Indians back and forth, and they'd get that friction so hot that they could get a fire started, right?
Little stick in there with
That's
a little.
what they used to get their fires going.
Now this is an interesting stone here. That was really.
This one right here,
Yeah, that long
an
one.
Indian chisel. It's one of the few that you'll ever see or see a picture of in Michigan museums.
See how it's hollowed out, and then it has a sharp edge on this end of it. Then you could take hold of that with both hands, couldn't he? And chisel
yeah,
like
they could
that.
just chisel like that.
To
And
make a canoe,
at the time that
hollow out a log.
was made, they probably had it a lot more sharper
Sure,
than what it
sure.
is right now. Through the ages, that just kind of corroded away a little bit.
Yep.
And then here's some spearheads. These are arrowheads through here. Here's some more. This is a tomahawk. This would be a sledgehammer right here. Here's a big log splitter. Probably just for firewood.
Now this little groove here is where they lashed on a handle.
They got their handle right in here.
Yeah.
And same as today, making a double-bitted axe.
Mm-hmm.
And here's one of my bigger spears, is the obsidian stone.
Obsidian stone.
Obsidian stone.
See that?
And
See how
that
sharp that is.
originally probably came from Arizona, Utah, Nevada, California.
That's what we don't realize, that a lot of this stone, these Indians traded, didn't they? The people that lived here, not just the Indians that we know of as Indians, but the Indians that were here years and years and years and years and hundreds and thousands of years ago, made some of these.
And here's an Indian pipe right here.
Little pipe right there.
And then I got another one right back over there.
Okay, there it
That's
is.
an
Yep.
Indian pipe.
That
These are-
stone pipe or is that clay?
That's clay.
Clay pipe.
Clay pipe.
And what's this round ball here? In the
That's an Indian grinding pot. That's
Okay.
where they they wanted to make oatmeal or ground up seeds. They just ground right through there. And I got another one right here. Them were found right in my subdivision on the north side of Virginia when I was landscaping.
I see. Okay, they take that little ball and rub it. They put that grain down in there and then grind it around.
Yeah. Here's obsidian stone in black.
Mhm.
And I got a few real nice.
Okay, well, let's go on over here and look at this big one right on the fireplace. Let's just kind of swing around and way up, swing around. And we'll take a little look at that one. That's a great display up there too.
Yeah, this frame I built it out of black walnut.
The frame.
The frame. And then we got some black velvet clothing store. There's a frame of his right here. I haven't got them attached.
Oh, they're not attached.
I
Oh,
don't-
okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, we
Yeah,
want.
they are.
Let's just leave them right there. Nick can get them right there, Bill. That's fine. We don't have to
Okay.
move them. No. Now these are. Now these are a little different. These look like more tools than
Yeah,
anything.
them were
Skinning?
skinning tools.
Skinning tools. That's what I
And
wondered.
that's what they would use to skin, and it worked better than a sharp knife. They could just work the flesh right off of the skin. And, here was there's a lot of these bigger arrowheads were what they used in the Grand River to spear sturgeon. And back 100 or 200 years ago, this area right through here, Flat River and the Grand River, was filled with, instead of carp and catfish, there was a lot of sturgeon.
Nice. This is a neat display here too. Did you come by that, or did you
This right here,
put it
a
together?
friend of mine in Ionia left them for me.
I see. And the one up above
I
here.
bought them.
Yeah, sure. Sure. The one up above here, that's quite interesting. What? This is a little stone axe, or is it an iron axe, isn't it?
That's a copper
Copper axe.
axe.
See
And
that
then
little copper axe?
I'm lucky I got 2 copper spearheads.
Oh,
All
way
the
up there. Uh huh.
And then right over here.
Oh, okay.
That was copper. I could have sold them 100 times.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you really displayed those nicely. How did you make them stay on there like that?
I
Bill?
put a little Elmer's glue in the
Oh,
back of each
just
one.
simple way. Okay.
And that was the only way that I could see to display them nice.
Yeah. Without.
Everyone.
Now, there's a different one. Look at the raggedy edges on that.
Yeah, that was a ripper, an arrowhead that hit inside the
Animal to bleed
chest
out
of the
quicker. Huh?
Animal. It would rip quite a hole in them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's Indian drills that they use. This tool right here to drill holes through for firestones. Way up above in the frame there.
See the
You'll see
holes
the
in that
holes
there?
in
That's
the
what they
stone.
put the holes in with.
And that's what they use to start the fires. And these are fleshing stones here. Them aren't tomahawks, they're just what they use for. They had to skin their animals out, and they had those different methods of doing it than what we do now. Just took the place of modern day knives and
Scrapers, huh?
scrapers and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, you've certainly had to do a lot of that with all the muskrats and mink and stuff that you caught. How long would it take you to skin out a muskrat when you got real good?
When I got real good, it took 2.5 minutes.
Okay, I thought probably you had timed yourself.
I could,
Somewhere's in there.
I could slice them right through from the inside of the leg here, right
Uh-huh.
straight across.
Yeah,
I could reach right in there with my thumbs and pull them right out.
clean them out, huh?
And then pull them right down their head. Slice the little slice right around their eyeball here on each side, and then pull them the rest of it.
Okay. You did more pulling than you did cutting, didn't you?
You've done more jerking and using your fingers,
Yeah.
working your finger back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And soon you could just about do it in your sleep.
Otherwise, you'd be liable to cut the skin too. Now, I think after that was one of your things. But then you got into this hunting. As you got as boys get older, they get bigger toys, right? And so Bill's toys kind of were hunting trips, and I think I'm going to go back just a little bit. I think 1947. Is that when you told me it was about the first you shot deer here? And tell me about that.
1947, was the first year that you were allowed to hunt deer in this area here. Prior to that, there wasn't a big population of deer, but in 1947 they decided they could harvest deer here. So at that time, in 1947, 48, and 49, you were allowed to hunt with deer rifle. So
Then they found it was too populated, didn't they?
then
They carried too far.
the farmers there was a few accidents with cattle getting hit with a deer rifle slug. So they closed the season up here for deer rifles, and you were allowed at that time, I think it was just 22s, and maybe possibly at that time shotgun slugs.
Then they quit the 22. You couldn't use 22s anymore because that only didn't knock a deer down, it only wounded them.
And they died off later.
Because I didn't realize that. I never hunted deer, and I went hunting rabbits. I always hunted rabbits with a 22. And I'm out hunting rabbits on Thanksgiving morning once, and coming down the road, and I'm all done hunting, and I'm taking all the shells out of my gun, my Remington bolt action repeater, and I'm shucking them out. The guy come along the road there and stopped. There was a DNR officer. He says, "What are you doing with that rifle out there?" I said, "I'm shooting rabbits." He says, "You can't carry that rifle. You can't carry that rifle here. It's a deer season now." And it was the first year that happened.
Yeah,
And so my gosh, I have done this ever since I was a little kid. I said, I've shot rabbits with a 22. I had no idea. I never got deer. I didn't know anything about that. And I talked to him. He starts writing me out a ticket. And then I kept talking to him. I just never, I wouldn't have done it, but I had no idea there was. Finally, he wrote warning across it. And he gave me a copy. He was just a nice guy. I never carried the 22 during deer season again. But so there went my rabbit hunting with the 22.
Yeah, but when they outlawed the 22, that was a good move because there was so many deer that died off running in the brush. The hunter never was able to retrieve this.
Yeah. And it was lead poisoning,
and that's when the 12-gauge slug barrel came in, and that was a good thing. They had the shotgun slug barrel, and then in later years they had a thread rifling in the barrel, and made them more accurate. And today, a shotgun slug 12-gauge is a great weapon for hunting white-tailed deer. If they get hit with a 12-gauge slug, they had a pretty good-sized bullet going through.
Now, let's talk about your first mule deer hunt. Where's that mule deer? And
here, if I shouldn't stand too
yes,
long.
why don't we sit over here? Is it over here? One of these deer over here? The mule deer?
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to sit right here? How would that be?
Wherever you want.
That'd be fine. Then you can just tell us about that mule deer up there.
Well, it was in 1966. When I went on my first big game hunt. I went to Buffalo County, Colorado, northwest corner of Colorado, where I hunted there. I could see the corner of Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado cornering right together. So I was hunting in 3 different states there.
Is this the pictures of that or no? No, this is a different one. Okay.
A different one.
Okay.
But
The mule deer is a big one up there with the big ears. Got him?
24 inches.
That's good. Yeah, here we go. There you go. Great.
Now this is right here. big buck. I thought it was an elk first. I let them go, and I told my friend, my hunter partner, I said, I'm not sure about that. I thought it was an elk, and I let them go. And I said, his rack was so huge. I ended up, Mel came over and checked the track out in the snow, and he said, you jumped a big mule deer.
Oh.
So I said, well, I'll take the track and see where he runs.
Uh-huh.
So we went through the next canyon, and there he was, standing right behind some evergreens. He didn't think that I would spot him, and he was hiding right behind them evergreens, so I could just see his white face.
Uh-huh.
And then I looked at him through the scope, and I could see that big rag.
Got a little excited then, huh?
Got a little excited. I shot him one shot through his chest. He never moved. He dropped right down to the ground.
Okay.
Got him right through his chest there.
All right. What's the deer behind here? The brown one. Okay.
That's one that I got in northern Michigan, up in the Upper Peninsula.
Okay. That would be this one right here.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Upper
Yeah.
UP, huh?
UP deer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They're really dark. Now, was this, tell me a story about this, what that is.
That's the desert ram, and they're found in your southwestern corner of the United States and down in Mexico.
Okay.
And I got him in the Baja Peninsula, which is that big long narrow arm of peninsula running parallel with the main Mexican country.
All right. Now that was probably, you got him on your last hunt, 1973. Is that right?
Yeah, right. What happened, I got him, and then I still put in for Nevada, where the other area is, where that area is inhabited by the desert ram species.
I see.
Bighorns too. And I was real lucky getting the desert ram from it on a drawing in Nevada. And so I booked a hunt with one of the top guides in Nevada, and proved to me that he was what he was ranked at, regarded by all your big game hunters in the southern states as one of the best guides
Oh yeah.
there is.
What does it cost to do a hunt like that? Something like that.
This
Approximately.
this ram right here, and dealing with the Mexican government, they wanted $10,000 for their fee,
Just for their fee to let you hunt there.
for a permit to hunt there.
Now is this?
So I had to mail them a check for $10,000, and I was worried ever since I sent them that check. And I didn't hear from the Mexican government for a couple of months, and I thought, oh boy, I think maybe I lost my $10,000. And I double checked with a couple fellows through the United States that went on that hunt, and they said, well, that's the way the Mexicans are.
I see.
They work about a half a day, and I guess it's so hot down there that
Okay.
they hibernate. And
Now is that when you needed your one for the Grand Slam?
I needed this one for my Grand Slam.
Okay.
I finished up. I got all 4 species of the North American bighorn sheep.
And tell us what those are.
The 4 species are the desert ram in the extreme southern states of the United States and Mexico, which is where I got this one, was in the Baja Peninsula.
Okay.
And then northward, you go up into the northern Utah and parts of Colorado, in the southwest corner of Colorado has got a pretty good herd of desert sheep. And then the next area is the Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep. And the Rocky in northern Colorado, the extreme northern part of California, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming. That's where the states that do have quite a few Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep.
Okay.
And then from the Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep, you go into the next species northward, and you're getting into what's called the big stone rams.
All right.
And the stone rams, that's the beginning of the glaciers, and they have the stone rams are mainly in the Cassidy-Arm Mountain area of northern British Columbia.
Okay.
And then from there, from the stone sheep, your fourth species is the doll sheep, which is in the extreme northern corner of British Columbia and the Yukon and Alaska ranges and mountains is where the doll sheep is inhabited. The doll sheep is pure white. The stone sheep matches up with the rock and everything in the British Columbia.
Hard to see.
They're hard to see.
Now, it gets pretty extreme temperatures there then to hunt in too, don't it? Or isn't it too bad?
Well, we got trapped up in the mountains of Wyoming. That was over 13,000 feet elevation.
Was that some of these pictures?
That's my guide and myself showing here's a tent that we put out, and the next day it was all 30 inches of snow fell in sight of 4 or 5 hours, and we were trapped in here. And some of the other pictures shows things.
Maybe back this way, maybe? Let's see here.
Here we are with the same tent
Okay.
after the snowstorm.
Uh-huh.
And we tried to sleep inside the
Whoa.
tent. The tent's so small, we could stick it in our pocket.
Oh my gosh, that wasn't much protection.
You know,
You stayed warm though, huh?
I didn't stay warm. I was freezing to death.
Oh.
But we had to wait an extra day before we could get off the mountain. We had got up to the peak here because I had shot and hit a bighorn ram, which was in the picture there, back there.
Back here, huh?
Here's the same tent.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. This is your ram down here?
And this is another ram that I took in Wyoming another season, another year.
Oh, okay.
I do sheep permits and license in the state of Wyoming. I drew a license in 1973, and then 4 or 5 years later, I took that ram right there, and all 3 rams were taken within a mile radius of each other. That's the Wind River Range, Bridger National Forest, Ganette Peak.
Okay. I see some other pictures here too. These are some high elevations, it looks like.
Here they are. Here's another picture of the wounded ram that I got, which is the one right over there hanging right on the wall there.
Okay.
But this is the way it is. This is the Ganette.
It's the one on this side, the first one, or the
second one from the right.
second one from the right in the middle,
Yeah,
the dark gray one.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But this is the elevation of the lake, and there's so much rock underneath these glaciers. They're ice capped and hard to walk in. You got to be real careful. But here's where the big orange rams are. They lay down in these rocks, and you can't even see them. You gotta wait for them to come up.
Now, are these little lakes?
Them are little lakes up there, and it's so far up in elevation that there's no fish ever been recorded caught out of these lakes. There's no oxygen.
Okay.
They have to have a lot of oxygen.
Okay.
Here's another picture of the bighorn ram shot in Wyoming.
Huh?
This is Ganette Glacier right up here.
How high is that?
Right here to the top, right through here. It's 13,800 feet.
Wow.
800 feet elevation higher than the Grand Tetons.
Gee,
Which is,
that is up in the air, isn't it?
and when we were coming down, I took another view of where we were hunting, and that mountain right to the right there, is where we ended up getting that ram.
Okay.
And the top of that mountain is right there, holding the sheep right there.
All right. Now, let's just point out the 4 sheep that are the Grand Slam. This is one,
And that's one,
okay?
and then the down sheep,
Which is the down one?
which is
One over here,
back of the light there.
up here.
No. The one right here is the down sheep.
The white one.
The white.
That's the one that's so hard to see.
That's the one that was in the elastic range that hard to bottom of it.
Yeah. See that?
No.
All right. And then the other one.
The other one is right over here. The stone ram is right over here.
Okay.
And that's the 4.
That's the one here.
4 that I shot. Okay.
All right.
He comes from northern British Columbia, the Cassiar Mountain. In some of your topographical maps, which I do have, back of the television there, it shows Glacial Lake, and that's the lake where the base camp was, where we got off with a float plane approach right in to the shoreline there.
Tell me a little bit about these guys.
That's your caribou. They come from British Columbia. This is what they call the woodland caribou.
Right.
And this is the barren ground caribou from Alaska.
Right.
And then British Columbia is south of the Yukon and Alaska.
Tell me a little bit about, what do they call this thing?
Them are the shovels of caribou. Most every bull caribou had. And that's what they could use as a shovel to swish the snow off the ground so they could get down
Something to eat, huh?
and get the buckbrush, the young sprouts of the buckbrush.
Beautiful specimens, Bill. They're just beautiful. I'd like to get over here to the moose there too, because the moose is always, seems like he is just always overtakes the room when you see the moose. He's quite an animal. Tell me a little bit about him.
This moose right here was taken in the Aztec Range, the Wrangell Mountains of Alaska come down into the Aztec Range, and so I was hunting close to the Alaskan east part of Alaska and the Yukon northwest of White Horse, the Yukon is the territory with the guide. And I got him in the Aztec Lake area. of the Yukon. And when I got him, there was several other moose, possibly, I think, if I recall, probably 4 or 5, which had horns equivalent in size to these this set right here. But my guide advised me to take this moose, and I didn't take his advice first. We went and checked out another big bull, and that had horns as big as this one anyway. But he had the one side of his horns tipped down a little bit. So he didn't have as perfect antlers as this one right here.
I see.
This one right here.
They are beautiful, both
And
sides.
From the front, it almost looks like elk. There's so many nice points on him.
Huh?
And he's,
Then you do, you go in there by horseback?
yeah, that was a typical scene of what it was in camp life. You had your saddle, your lunch bag, your gun, and a scabbard here hanging along the side right there. And them horses have had so much work through the years that they don't have time to get cocky or get bucky. They're real gentle horses. But it was a real pleasure to hunt with the outfitters that I did.
This is your guide?
This was the horse wrangler.
Oh,
So
horse
I
wrangler.
to stay in camp, and there was always 2 to 3 extra horses there. And when we had to pack up, we saved all the meat off this moose right here. In fact, when the float planes come in, they load up with meat, and the meat goes back to Watson Lake, Yukon, or in the Yukon backwater right by Whitehorse. And the Indian families come down there and pick up all the meat.
So it gets used.
So,
One last
you know,
stop I'd like to make here with hunting, and that's this old grizzly bear. You got to tell me a story about this grizzly
Well, that grizzly bear, I guess I can tell you the story because it's true.
bear. Okay.
That grizzly bear was going through the mountain, and I spotted it, and I said to Frank Joel, Frank, I said, there's a bear over there. I said, it's a black bear. He was much darker. He was colored, just about like this color right here. He had a gold, you can still see a little of the band. It looked like he had a necktie on.
Okay.
And Joe said, Frank Joe, he says, that's not a black bear. He says, that's a grizzly.
Oh.
And I said, well, he's pretty far. I said, do you think we could work up to him and get a shot at him, or what should we do? He said, let's take and get on the horses and get down the line a little ways further. So that's what we did. Is he was traveling at a speed that it was a fast walk, real fast walk. Something must have scared him. But he was 400 yards away from me.
4 football fields.
And
Okay.
I aimed, I figured I had a drop on my bullet would drop probably about 12 to 13 inches. And I aimed right for the top of his nose and right up here. And with his movement, I
Okay.
ended up, I shot him right through the shoulder here.
God.
And it busted his shoulder right up, but he still had the strength to come running down the mountain, and most of the time he was rolling down there, and my guide kept yelling at me, he said, shoot him, and he was bouncing from cliff to cliff, and just like a rubber tennis ball would do. And I said, I can't shoot him yet, Frank. I said, I gotta wait for him to come down to the base of the mountain. And when he come down to the base of the mountain, he was running kind of right for us. Just on a little angle. And I ended up making a total of 11 shots at him.
Oh, did
And finally, I brought him down with the last shot, the ninth shot.
Mm-hmm.
By that time he sat right down just like we sat down in a chair.
Oh, okay.
And
Then you got a shot at him easy.
then I got a shot at him, and I shot him right through his chest. Right through here someplace. And then the 11th shot, he sat down, and there was this little dead spruce tree that the winters froze, and it had and I said, I gotta take my time and get a good shot at him. And he had turned, and he was sitting there still watching us, but he didn't have the strength to come after us.
Okay.
And I pulled up, and I rested my gun right on that little limb sticking out from that spruce tree. Because by that time I was sitting there panting. I had run probably 200 to 300 yards
Okay.
to get to him.
Sure, you're shaking. Sure.
And I'm shaking, so that controlled my gun.
Uh-huh.
And he was facing me, and I thought I'm going to get him right through his shoulder.
Okay.
His throat right here.
Okay.
So I got my crosshairs right on him and squeezed the trigger, and he made a
Uh-huh.
that's all it was.
Then you were safer.
Grizzly went down. Now it's very interesting to know that when you deal with a grizzly that's laying down and is supposed to be dead, you don't walk up to that grizzly bear. The Indians picked up pieces of rock shale around here and there, and Frank, he'd throw that and throw it and hit him in the head with that and see if there was any reaction at all. And then he'd walk around him, throw another rock, and after we waited probably 5-10 minutes, and he said, it's all go. He said, you killed him, he's dead.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about it.
Well, Bill, I thank you so much for telling me about all these animals here. And Bill and Joanne, I tell you, you can be very proud of all of the contributions that you both have made to our community, the Lowell community, and the Virgins area community. You have a great family of kids that you've raised. The housing you have made available to so many families in our community. And the way you have planned and cared for the land that you bought by planting the many pine trees and the balance and the orderly development shows you care about the land so much that God gave you and entrusted to you to use. And this concern shows that the history of the people that lived here on this land long ago, all of these things that you have displayed in this room that we've looked at. And the reverence you show in telling about and displaying the animals from your hunts makes this interview one of the most enjoyable that we've ever done. I think Nick will tell me that. And also, and on behalf of the Lowell Area Historical Museum, Nick and I want to thank you so very, very much for your time.
Well, thank you. This was special to have you guys.
Thank you, Bill.
That was really nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and you too, Nick.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The following oral military history project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.